Hello children, so we saw in our last class, that is our last chapter, our last lesson, that is force and pressure. Okay, forces and pressure. So it is forces and pressure is given to any other object. It can be moving. How it is moving? It is based on the frictional force. Based on the frictional force. So what does mean by a frictional force? So one object, it is coming to contact to the another object. Okay, by moving, an object is coming contact with the another object. So it makes to move some more distance. So that we can say it is a giving force. That force we can say it is a frictional force. For example, a ball is moving on the ground. Okay, a ball is moving on the ground. So ball, the surface of the ball and the surface of the ground is both are coming with contact and it is moving. Okay, so at end the ball comes to rest. So there it is a friction. So the frictional force stops the ball. The frictional force stops the moving ball. We can say it is a frictional force. Okay, so let us learn about a friction. Okay, learn about friction in this class. Okay, so what does mean by friction? The familiar examples. Okay, so can you remember the examples? That is moving of your vehicle. Okay, so moving of your vehicle, the tires of your vehicle and the road. Okay, so the surface of the road, both are coming with contact while moving the vehicle. Okay, so there it is a frictional force. So the frictional force is depends upon the surface of an object. Okay, so that is increase of force or decrease of frictional force based on the surface of the objects. Okay, and so a driver of a car or a truck, so slowing down. Okay, that is slowing down the vehicle at a traffic signal. Okay, so in a traffic signal we have to stop the vehicle. While moving fast also, while we are seeing the traffic signal, we have to stop the vehicle. So while stopping, there is a frictional force about, that is the surface of the tires on the vehicle and the surface of the ground. Okay, so both are comes with contact, it stops the vehicle. Okay, so there we can say it is we can observe a frictional force. So what is meant by friction? So both the surfaces of an object comes with contact, so that makes the friction. Okay, so now let us see, that is moving ball. I told you, moving ball. So friction is a force which resists the relative motion of surfaces. I told you that is two objects. The surface of two objects comes with contact. Okay, so that we can say it is a friction. Okay, and here we can say that is rest and motion. Okay, so while comes with contact on two objects. Okay, so it comes to rest. So rest, and then we are giving force to the one object, it can be moving. So rest and motion are relative terms. Okay, so rest and motion. Rest and motion are relative terms. Rest and motion are relative terms. Okay, so while comes to rest, we want a frictional force. We want some force. Okay, so that is all types of surfaces. Okay, they will be including in the frictional force. All types of surfaces means we have a states of matter. Okay, what are the states of matter? We have three states of matter. What is solid, liquid and gases. Okay, here we can take solid, liquid and air. Air is also a gaseous in form. Solid, liquid and gas. So this gas we can take here, it is a air. Okay, so in these three states also, these three surfaces also are in a frictional effect. Okay, so the surfaces of like solid, liquid and air offer the force of frictions. Okay, so let us say one example for this. Okay, solid. Okay, solid means I told no, that is, it is the moving of a ball on the ground. So ball is moving on the ground. So this is the example for a solid, okay, and liquid. So liquids, okay. So here we are pouring a water on the glass, and on that we are pouring the kerosene or petrol or any other oily liquid we are pouring on the water, okay. So both doesn't mix, is it right? Oil and water doesn't mix. Why? Because the density of oil is less than the water. So it also having a friction, okay. Solids are also having a friction. Or we are pouring oil on a surface on the ground, okay. We are pouring oil, okay. So oil is a liquid, is it right? Oil is a liquid. It flows on the ground. So while flowing that oil, there is a friction. So there is a frictional force. The oil is moving on the floor, is it right? So there is a friction. And air, okay. So here air. What is the friction here? Aeroplane moves on the sky, is it right? So there also there is a friction, okay. So always friction opposite direction, okay. So frictional force always applies in the opposite direction, okay. So that is direction of movement, okay. So friction is always occurs in the opposite direction of the movement, okay. See here air is there, is it right? Air. So aeroplane is moving like this, okay. The air is flows like this, is it right? So opposite direction of air, aeroplane is moving opposite direction. So the friction is applying opposite. So while friction is applying opposite means the vehicle or any other objects can be come to rest, okay. While ball is moving on the ground, is it right? While ball is, so this is a ground. So ball is moving on a ground, okay. While ball is rotating, the force is applying in the opposite direction. While the frictional force is applying opposite direction of the ball, the ball comes to rest. The ball comes to rest, okay. So the frictional force is always opposite direction of the movement of an object. This comes in your 1 mark question, is it right? Keep in your mind, children. See, the frictional force always acts opposite direction of the movement of an object, okay. So these are the properties. See, rest and motion are relative terms. What is the friction? So friction is the force which resists the surface of the, that is which resists the relative motion of the objects. Relative motion of the objects, that is surface of the objects, okay. What is the friction? Friction is a force. Friction is a force. There is opposite direction, okay. Frictional force is always opposite direction. What is the friction? Friction is a force, okay, which resists the rest and motion, that is relative motion of the surface of the object. Friction is a force which resists the relative motion of the surface of the objects, okay. And it can be applied on all the states, okay. It can be applied on all the states of the objects, and it can be shows the opposite direction of the objects, movement of the objects, okay. These three are the properties of friction. What does it mean by friction? It resists the relative motion of the object, surface of the object, okay. And then it applies on all the three states, okay. And frictional force is always moving in the opposite direction of the surface of the object while moving the object, okay. Opposite direction of the moving object, okay. So in any object we can take any example, we can take the frictional forces applies opposite direction of the moving object, okay. While we are braking the vehicle, we want to stop the vehicle on the traffic signal, we want to brake it, okay. So the tire of the vehicle is moving like this, is it right? The frictional forces applies on the tire are opposite direction, okay. While moving the tire, while moving the wheel of the vehicles, okay, the wheel is moving. So So it flows on the road. Okay, so the direction that is frictional force applies in the opposite direction. Okay, so this is the way that is frictional forces applied on the moving objects. Okay, so then we have that is how the frictional forces applied on the surfaces of the objects. Okay, that is after applying the brakes. Okay, after applying the brakes to a bike or any other surfaces of the moving objects, there is it offers the friction. Okay, so to stop the vehicles. Okay, so these are the things. Then factors affecting friction. So these are the frictional force. Okay, that is properties of the frictional force. And what are the factors which affects the frictional force? So what are the factors? I told here only, that is it moves the opposite direction, and also that is the irregularities on the surfaces of the objects, the irregularities. Okay, factors. What are the factors affecting the friction? First one, the irregularities on the surface. The irregularities on the surface of the object. What does mean by irregularities? Okay, so here the surface is very smooth, isn't it? It is very smooth and it is a regular way on the ground. Means we can say, so we can say the ball is moving at a same direction. Okay, if there is no level on the ground, okay, it can be like this. Some more unlevel grounds. Okay, some more unlevel grounds. Okay, so here the ball is moving like this. Okay, so the ball is moving, rotating and coming like this. So it can be straight here. Okay, through the unlevel ground. Okay, so the book on the table. Okay, so the book on the unlevel table. Okay, so it can be moving slowly. While moving the book, there is a hump on the table. Okay, so there is a like this. Okay, the book can be stopped on the hump on the table. Okay, so these are the irregularities. So while these irregularities, the frictional force can be stops the object. Okay, so the frictional force is applied. Okay, it cannot be applied on the irregular surfaces of the ground. Okay, and then it is caused by the very difficult surfaces. Okay, so that is increase in slope and decrease in slope. So here also there is no frictional force. The object can be comes to rest. Okay, and then one more factor it can be affecting the frictional force, that is based on the weight of the objects. Okay, so weight of the objects. So the weight of the object is more, it cannot moving easily. So ball is very less weight, it can be moving very easily. If we are having a 100 kg box, okay, on the sliding floor, 100 kg box on the sliding floor. Okay, so it is moving slowly on the floor. If it is very lightweight, okay, 1 kg box, so that 1 kg box is moving very faster than the 100 kg box on the sliding floor. Is it right? So based on the weight of the object also, it affects the frictional force on the surfaces of the object. Okay, and then regular surface offers more force of friction. So irregular surfaces doesn't offers the frictional force. So it is a regular surface means, okay, so it is a regular surface. That regular surface offers more friction. Okay, more friction. It moves very fast. I don't know, that is less weight objects are having more friction comparing to the high weight objects. objects. Okay, as the same here also, irregular surfaces doesn't offers the frictional force, and regular surfaces are having more friction. Okay, so these are the factors affecting the frictional force on the objects. Okay, surfaces of the objects. Okay, so we are seeing day-to-day life so many incidences that is having frictional forces. Okay, so we are walking on the wet floor. Okay, we are walking on the wet floor. Certainly we are having a slippery surface. So we are fell down. Okay, we are having to fell down on the slippery surface. So that is also based on the frictional force. Okay, and we are having so many things, okay, on our hand. So that also we are slipping it out, okay, based on the frictional force. Okay, so many things we are seeing in our day-to-day life. Is it right, children? Okay, so now let us move on to the another topic, that is types of friction. Now we saw what are the factors which is affecting the friction. Okay, so that is irregular surfaces and weight on the objects. Is it right? And based on this we have a types of friction. Okay, so types of friction. What are the types of friction? What are the types of friction? So we have 4 types of friction. Okay, so we have 4 types of friction. So one is static friction. Static friction. So what is meant by static friction? So we are standing on the ground. Is it right? We are standing on the ground. So while standing also there is a friction. Okay, so there is a friction based on the gravitational force. Before we are moving from one place to another place, there is a friction. Okay, so while before moving on the object, okay, before moving we are having a friction. That friction we can say is a static friction. This friction is refers to the object is at rest. Okay, this friction is refers that it represents the rest, object is at rest. That is static friction. This friction, that is before moving the object. Okay, before moving the object is at rest. Is it right? That rest position. Okay, while moving, before coming to the moving position, that we can say is a static friction. So what do we mean by static friction? This static friction, okay, frictional force that comes into contact with another object, that comes into contact with another object, that is moving a ball. So ball is like this, okay, it is on the position. Okay, so that position is moving. Okay, so before coming into the contact of another place, so that we can say it is a static friction. Okay, so that is an object starts moving. Okay, so while moving, starts moving, so before that moving, that we can say it is a static friction. So an object is at rest. An object is at rest. So while moving this object from one place to another place, so before moving it comes to, that is it comes to contact with this place. Okay, it comes to contact with this place. So before coming to contact with that place, that friction, okay, on that place. So an object is on rest. So before coming to the contact with another place, so before coming to contact, so this friction, before friction, okay, so that we can say is a static friction. Okay, so an object has to overcome the static frictional force in order to start its movement. In order to start its movement before coming to contact with the another place. Okay, so that friction we can say is a static friction. So another type of friction is sliding friction. Sliding friction. You all know, children, what is meant by sliding? Okay, so we are playing on the slides now. So that friction we can say is a sliding friction. An object is coming into the contact, coming into play with the another object, another places. That we can say say it is a sliding friction. That is, such a movement is called slide. We are sliding now, so that we can say it is a sliding friction. So sliding friction is the force that opposes the movement of the slide on the object. We are sliding. So the opposite friction, okay, the place is moving, there only, is it right? We are moving. So the friction is opposite direction. Okay, so that is, it is like this. We are sliding here. The friction is moving like this. The object is moving this side. So the friction is opposite direction. So it is a sliding friction. Okay, and then the third type of friction is rolling friction. Rolling friction. Rolling friction also you know, okay, that is throwing a ball, okay, hitting a ball. The ball is rolling over from one place to another place. That is rolling friction. Okay, so what does mean by rolling friction? When an object is rolling from one place to another place on a surface of the force of a friction. That is one place to another place. The object is rolling. Okay, so there also the frictional forces are acting on the opposite direction. Okay, so sliding friction and rolling friction, most probably it can be same. Okay, sliding means the object is coming in contact with same. Okay, rolling means all the same. Okay, that is the ball is rolling over like this. Okay, so rolling friction and that is sliding friction. Okay, understood children? So rolling friction and sliding friction. Okay, and then fourth type of friction is fluid friction. Okay, what does it mean by fourth type? That is fluid friction. Fluid friction. Okay, so what does it mean by fluid friction? That is in the state of a object is a liquid state. Okay, object is a liquid state. That is when an object is moving in a fluid. Okay, I don't know, that is in a wet surface. Oil is moving. That is, or we can say it is very good example. Mercury is moving now. While seeing mercury is moving, that is a fluid friction. Okay, so that is, it exerts the fluid friction upon the object. Based on the object, it can be depends on the surface. Okay, so in a wet surface, we are pouring the oil. That oil is moving from one place to another place. That we can say is a fluid friction. Okay, children, understood children? Okay, so these are the types of friction. What are the four types of friction? One is static friction. Okay, the static friction can be applied before moving the object. Okay, and second is sliding friction and rolling friction and fluid friction. Okay, so what are the advantages of friction? Okay, so what are the advantages? What are the advantages of friction? So we can write by the frictional force. Okay, we are having a pen now. The pen tip is moving on the paper. While moving on the paper, there is a frictional force. Is it right? So we can able to write. We can able to walk. Okay, we can able to stand also. Okay, so these are the uses. Okay, so we can able to fix the nail on the wall. Okay, that is also a friction. Okay, so advantages of friction: we can able to eat. Okay, we can able to eat, and we can able to walk. We can able to write. Okay, these are all the advantages of friction. And then we can able to construct a building also. Okay, without a friction, we can't able to build a building. Is it right? So that also it is easy. And without a friction, so till we saw that we can able to write, we can able to eat. Okay, these are all very familiar things. So without a friction, nothing we can do. Is it right? We can't drive the vehicle on the road. Is it right? We can't drive. So without a friction, we can't walk. Okay, without a friction, we can't walk. So these are all the advantages of the friction. Okay, so it would not be able to, without friction, we can't able to construct any buildings. Okay, so without frictional force we can't do anything. Okay, so it is not possible. So then disadvantages also there, no? So if there is any advantages, so some disadvantages also there. Okay, so what are the disadvantages of the friction? What are the disadvantages? So the main disadvantages. The main disadvantage is wear and tear. Okay, so wear and tear is the main disadvantages. What do we mean by wear and tear? So we are wearing a shoes, no? That shoes are coming into the frictional force. The soles of the shoes are tearing. Okay, so that is wear and tear. That is disadvantages of the frictional force. Wear and tear of the objects. Okay, such as that is moving parts of the vehicle. So and machines also. So in some machines are coming with contact. The parts of the machines are coming with contact. So that can be spoiled. Okay. So that frictional force is spoiling the objects of the parts of the machine. Okay. And the soles of the shoes are comes to tearing. It takes some more time. So not in the one at a time. Okay. It takes some more time to wear and tear. Okay. And then it also results the production of sound. Okay. Production of sound. So some places we are hearing a very big sound, that is braking the vehicles also we are hearing a sound. Okay, that is production of sound. And some more frictions are having production of heat. So more heat. So while we are that is in producing of more heat of the frictional force, that is loss of energy. Loss of energy. Okay, loss of energy. Okay, and it leads to pollution also. Okay, in some more cases, while frictional force it produces smoke also, that causes pollution. And some more places, so more sound, isn't it? Based on the more sound, it causes noise pollution. It causes noise pollution. Causes noise pollution. These are the disadvantages of the frictional force. These are the disadvantages of the frictional force. Okay. So more force is required to drive a vehicle. While driving a vehicle, more force is applied. So it comes to contact with the frictional force. It suddenly stops. There is a sound is produced. So that sound we can say is a noise pollution. Okay. And then in some more factories and industries, there is a frictional forces are using to produce so many products. Okay, so there it is releasing of heat energy. So there the loss of energy is there. Okay, so these are the disadvantages of the frictional forces. Okay, so